Hello everybody, thanks Derek. My name is Simon Xistouris and I'm the CEO for AC3. Today I'll be talking about an MSP's perspective of GovDC digital communities. We've been a marketplace, or we've been involved with the data center right from the beginning. In 2014, we moved all of our infrastructure, late 2013, early 2014, we moved all of our infrastructure and that of our customers into the data center. Since then, we've been providing services to government agencies and have grown to become one of the largest providers out of Silverwater and Unanderra. Just before I move on, I just wanted to say a very quick thank you to Derek and the GovDC team. Today's been an absolutely fantastic event. I can't believe the turnout, and we're both proud and privileged to be part of it, so thank you. Okay, so can I just get a quick show of hands? Who's already in the DC today? Okay, so there's a fair few people. And who's considering the move or is in the process of? Okay, cool. All right, well, my presentation today is going to cover two parts. One is how we've seen the digital community evolve over the last 24, 36 months, and some practical tips and conversations that we're having with our customers about being in the data center or taking advantage of the services in the data center. Okay, so just very briefly, Derek mentioned it. AC3 used to be a government agency. We started off in 1999 as a joint venture between the state government and 8 other universities. Our remit at the time was to provide shared supercomputing services back to the universities, things like high-performance computing for flight simulators, weather simulators, scientific research, things of that nature. So our DNA is really around shared supercomputing services, and we've kind of evolved from that to provide IT services and managed services in the modern day. You'll notice the picture there, that's Bay 8, which is where we used to be, which is only a few bays down, or a few bays across. There we had our corporate offices, but we also had our data center, which we had built and managed since '99. At the time when we had made the decision to move into GovDC, or rather didn't make the decision, we were told to move into GovDC, thank you Pedro, to move into GovDC, we had approximately 120 racks of equipment that were hosted in the data center, so a quite large footprint, and typical of many agencies and departments having an on-prem environment that just needs to move. Nowadays, everything that we have is hosted out of both Silverwater, Unanderra, and we also have a presence in Global Switch for our commercial customers. Today, in the modern world, we're a very focused MSP providing services to government and also into the commercial space. Okay, so digital communities and the current landscape. People have touched on this, and I'll just frame it in terms of the way that we see it. So there's been 3 things that have evolved over the last 24 or 36 months that have forged the transition to digital community. The first one is the procurement evolution. The second one has been the marketplace itself, the evolution there, and the last one is the operational evolution. And that's really forged the change around the digital community. So when GovDC was first established, it was really around data center reform. That's now evolved into something totally different, and that's what I'll be talking about today. In terms of the procurement evolution, what we've seen is really there's 3 modes of procuring in the current environment. There's 3 emerged modes that are there that people are acquiring and procuring services for. The first one is the traditional on-prem approach, where you've got a piece of hardware that you need, or some software, or some licensing. You go to a vendor or a supplier, you procure that, and you put that into your environment, and you operate it, which is fairly traditional. It's an established model. It's been around for some time. The second one is a solution sell or a value-driven outcome kind of sell. And that's really where you're looking to a provider or a vendor for a black box turnkey style solution. You put out a requirement for an outcome, the vendor responds to that, you procure it, you put it into your environment, and either you run it or your vendor would run it. And the last one is the one that's more emerging and one that's talked about more often these days is around the service provider or the consumption-based model, which is pay for what you use. So these 3 modes of procuring are really changing the behaviours around procurement itself. How do you actually procure the services, but also how do you actually support it from an operational perspective? You've got a mode where you're taking something and you're putting it into your environment. You've got a separate mode where it's a turnkey and it could be managed by a provider. And the third mode, which is it's a complete as a service. So that puts some operational constraints in terms of how you are operating. Operational evolution. What we're seeing now is that business strategy is very much IT strategy. No longer is IT doing back office projects, which is upgrading servers, etc. We're doing projects that are having an impact to our customers and to the citizens. So very much business strategy is interlinked with the way IT strategy is written. DevOps, and I heard this term used just recently, developers are the new kingmakers. And what I mean by that is that the development teams and the application teams are having a far bigger influence these days in the way that IT departments are structured than what they ever had. So CIOs, IT managers, etc., are really relying on the developers and making structural changes to unlock the potential that development teams have inside of their environment. So the developers, in the term that I'm using, are the new kingmakers. They're the ones that are really driving the agenda and the narrative around how to structure your environment. And the last point is really around shadow IT, which is quite well known, where someone in the business, goes out to a marketing, finds a product online, whether it's the marketing department or an operational team, and they acquire a piece of software and they put it into their environment. Now, what this does is, we spoke about the procurement evolution, we've got this operational evolution. These three things are driving changes in the way that IT departments are structured. So before, we used to have environments where it was build and manage. Now it's moved to design and govern. It doesn't mean we need to run it. Things are moving in different directions. So there's a lot of downward pressure in the way that IT departments are structured, and we're seeing in our customers that they're actually making changes, wholesale changes. We're seeing spill and fills. We're seeing people move departments around where digital's coming in, runs going out. There's a lot of change that's happening in this space. The last evolution that we've seen, and this is very, very much a practical one, is that we've seen an evolution in the services that are being offered out of the marketplace. There's been a bit of talk about this, and when we first moved in 2013-14, we did a lift and shift, or primarily. We moved as much of the equipment that we could because our mandate was just get into the data center. So we picked a whole bunch of equipment and we moved it in there and we landed, and it was a colo play. That moved on, and we had customers asking us, okay, we want to move in, but then we want someone to manage it. And that evolved into managed services, and then it further evolved into an X as a service. We don't care how you do it, just provide us a fee for it. Now it's evolved, and we just spoke about it in the last presentation around that hybrid style of IT. And this is really where it's a combination of everything. It's a bit of X as a service, it's a bit of colo, it's a bit of managed service, it's a whole plethora of it. And that's really the next part of what I want to talk about, how the digital community, or GovDC, has actually transformed into that, or that's what we're seeing. Okay, so just to circle back, we've got the procurement evolution, the marketplace evolution, and the operational evolution. That's now formed. We're talking about digital communities. In this context, I'm talking about hybrid IT. Those three things is what we've seen in the marketplace over the last 24 months that's driven the change around DC. Okay, I've just got a visual representation here, and this is how we perceive things operating from GovDC. At the centre, you'll notice that we've got GovDC and the MSP. At the bottom there, we've got marketplace and marketplace providers that are providing services into the DC. At the top, we've got Cloud Connect, which is really providers that are providing services to government that are outside of the data centre, outside of the four walls of Unanderra and Silverwater. And then you've got agencies that are connecting back in. So from a logical representation, a 10,000-foot view of how things hang together, that's how we see things are unfolding. People are moving the MSP and the data center, GovDC, at the center of their network, the center of their environment. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, we're seeing that going to that trimodal thing where the guys were talking about before, you've got government policing the marketplace. So you're in a safe pair of hands. You've got someone that's in the marketplace, that's developed the marketplace for the right reasons. They're not trying to commercially profit off it. They're trying to offer a better and improved level of service for government. You've got suppliers that are in there that are already pre-qualified. You've got people that go through the schemes, and they're on the panels, and they're already checked through that baseline worth of checking that you're already able to provide services to government. There's also... There's one other point that I was going to make here, and it slips me. Easy provision of services. So basically, there's already people that are in the marketplace that are connected and providing services that you can quickly consume. So there's already providers that are tapped in either through Cloud Connect or through the marketplace that are offering services to other agencies that you might potentially want to take up. So there's 3 or 4 really good reasons and a number of other ancillary reasons. Obviously, the mandate and moving into the data center is another big one. But in terms of the way it's structured, we're seeing this happen more and more, and we're actually endorsing it and promoting it. We want people to move in there because it just makes it easier for the community as a whole. And just a cheeky slide for us. We're just that's us in the marketplace. There's obviously a number of other providers, but we're one of a number of few, and that's where we live. Okay, so that's a logical representation of how things hang together, or how we see things hang together. What I wanted to do is try and relate that back to a more practical representation. And I've just got a very brief slide here, which is really a citizen or a user that's connecting to the MSP or to GovDC, and I won't get into the detail around how that gets done. That's some sort of network connectivity. And that citizen or user actually connects to a number of different services, whether it's their ERP system, whether it's their case management system, their productivity tools, whatever it may be. They're consuming services from a number of different providers and also from a number of different data centers. So this hybrid style of IT, in our view, this is how it looks. You've got some stuff that's sitting potentially in the data center that's yours. You've got some stuff that sits in the data center that's somebody else's, but then you might have some services and some products that are sitting in other data centers that are connected through the backbone, through this trusted network. So this is like, if I look around in the audience, and we do a lot of work with a number of agencies, this is very typical of a government agency. Those logos that are up there are probably stuff that you already have in your environment, along with the other stuff like the normal back office, file servers, print servers, whatever. So this is actually now the norm. We're seeing this very typical. This is a standard use case in terms of a customer saying, how do I actually make it work? Which is really the next part of the slide around how do we actually now take this bespoke application systems data centers that provide it to us in a trusted way that's easily to consume. What do we need to do as users to actually make it happen? So I'm just going to throw out some things to consider, and this is by no means a comprehensive list of all the things that need to be thought about during this process, but it's some of the points that we're talking to our customers more often about. Okay, the top 3 things, I've just decided to put them up there. The first thing is really around governance, risk and compliance. We've already got a layer of that built in through the backbone and what the guys are doing with procurement and the GovDC team. But over and above that, there's some stuff that needs to be done on a practical level in the departments and in the agencies to make sure that they're protecting themselves. Back in the day, people used to have a check, a risk check or an ISO check once a year or 6 months of the year. They used to pull out a risk register, tick that off. Things were great. You were complied. You'd put that back in the top drawer. In the modern day, you've got this disparate system. You absolutely do need to have proper controls and proper processes that are in place that are enforcing this governance, risk, and compliance layer. It's actually a real life thing that needs to be considered. So just some high-level points, and again, by no means, if there's any risk people out there, you want to ping me on things that I've missed, don't do that. But this is just to give you an idea of the things that we're talking to our customers about. Create a risk assessment questionnaire. I think in the last presentation, the guys are talking about qualifying the workload. Create a questionnaire, put on that questionnaire the things that you might want to consider, things like probity, sovereignty, business continuity, and when you're looking to onboard a new application or a new system, run it through the questionnaire and profile it where it lives best. Does it live here? Does it live there? Is it okay to be on-prem, public cloud, wherever it may be? Consider your transition out plans. We're having more and more conversations with our customers now. When we win the business, okay, they're asking us about, okay, what happens when we disengage? Develop a process, develop a transition out plan that's built into the contract that covers the points about backing it out, reversing what's just happened. Contracted service levels. This is a bit of a gotcha, and we've come across this just more recently where the advertised service levels are not the contracted service levels. So best effort doesn't mean that it's actually in the contract and you're being measured against it. Look to build in those SLAs and the service level rebates or credits into the contract. Supplier accreditation. Again, we spoke about ISO. What we're seeing is a lot of our government customers starting to flow down the requirements for accreditation down to us. Okay, hey, listen, we want to be 27001 or we want to be PCI compliant. What part of that are you doing? What part of that are you already complied for that we don't have to do? So we're seeing conversations happen around flowing those requirements back down to the suppliers. Again, PCI is one that's happened a little bit more frequently these days. ISO we've had for a long time, but there's other ones that are flowing down, something that you might want to consider. Okay, reporting. Another one that's being talked about more and more often is what type of reports do we need to put into the service delivery or the service management layer to make sure it meets our compliance regulations. So there's going to be reports and things that you want to measure, report on as a business. That needs to flow down and be put into the contract and drafted and been very well articulated so that so suppliers can deliver on that. Okay, the next area is a service catalogue, and the guys have announced the service catalogue in the sense of connecting buyers and sellers in a broader sense in the marketplace. This topic is very hot at the moment. We're having a lot of conversation with our customers around what is a service catalogue, what does it mean, how does that look for me? And in our view, what we're seeing is you've got this disparate array of services and products that you're providing. In that previous slide, we've had ERP systems, productivity tools, etc. It's about getting all that harmonized in one view so your users or your citizens can consume that in an easy way. Okay? So it's becoming a very hot topic. We spoke about ServiceNow. We also use ServiceNow, and it can be a simple manual spreadsheet that you distribute, or it could be something that's online. Whatever takes your fancy. Okay, so some of the conversations, service catalogue, and this is can get a little bit complicated, but support models. You've got 3 suppliers, you've got a single catalogue. How do you actually take a call as an agency or a department and then actually manage the support model behind it? I've got an SLA with this supplier and I've got an SLA with that supplier. How does that come to me and then go flow back out to the different supplier and we maintain the same user experience? Procurement models. So behind the scenes, you've got the same challenges around how do you actually buy it? Okay, is it monthly in the arrears? Is it per user? How do I actually interface with my supplier, my multiple suppliers, to get that procurement process down pat? And there's obviously things that need to happen behind the scenes around making sure there's purchase orders and things of that nature, but there's a procurement process that needs to be ironed out behind the scenes. Publishing the service. I mentioned that previously. How do I actually publish a service that's meaningful to my users? How do I present it? How do I serve it to them where they can actually understand, define what they're looking for and actually order it? Ordering, and this is the front end process of the procurement cycle, and that's really when a user gets on and wants to buy another Office productivity license or procure another ERP license, whatever it may be. There's the internal workflows that need to happen within the agency or the department to allow that to happen. You don't want someone clicking, I've got 2 new people starting and they deploy a whole lot of software and licenses when they don't need to do that. So ironing out the front end process around the ordering. And then finally, the consumption and the billing model. At the end of the month, at the end of the billing cycle, you need a mechanism to capture that and actually report on it. Number one, from a financial perspective, what am I up for? What have we just spent in the last month in this new world? And also, if you are doing chargeback or you're doing cost back, how do I actually divvy that up and give the bill back to the person that's actually used the service? So in the service catalogue space, it's a big and broad spectrum, but these are the types of conversations we're having with our customers. Okay, the next point is something that's starting to emerge. Okay, and this is, I'll only just touch on this because of time, but what we're seeing, you've got the service catalogue, you've got everything nice and neat, you've got all these services that have been published. I can understand what it is, I order one of them, but then what? It needs to be orchestrated, it needs to be delivered. So the conversation that we're having with our customers here, and this is becoming more and more, is the fulfillment process and the fulfillment engine. Okay, I've just ordered this, again, I use productivity, I've just used this productivity license. How does that actually get deployed to the user? Is it a manual process? Is it an automated process? Is it scripted? Does it go into a ticket and then someone picks up that ticket and does something with it? There's a whole sphere here that needs to be addressed. And some of the more mature organisations have got fulfillment processes that are automated for the basic stuff. Excuse me, basic stuff. But other ones are going to a manual process. They're starting small and starting to build up from there. But this is a conversation that for us is entering into our discussions more and more often. How do I then orchestrate it? Okay, so we just spoke about a few things. Where should I start? Like if I was sitting back out in the audience, okay, there's a lot of information here. What do I do with it? Where do I go? How do I actually start moving this forward, aside from speaking to someone that's done it before? Is some practical examples. Leverage the procurement panels. A lot of the stuff that's happening out of the procurement team is they're creating categories, and in those categories they're creating panels, and there's products and services that are actually on the panel that quite often align with the services that you're offering. whether it's service management, infrastructure as a service, whatever it may be, you can start by looking at those SCM panels and aligning your products to be what's already on the procurement panel, which will make things easier, number one, for procuring it, but also you don't need to go through that whole process of defining it. It's already there. Speak to your peers. As I mentioned, today's a fantastic event. I don't think there's 1,000 people or 700 people. I don't know how many people there is. There's a lot of people that are out there that have already gone down this path before. There's people that are doing it, or they're in mid-flight. They're about to embark on a project. There's a lot of people that you can actually speak to today, and also pass this point through the GovDC team to connect you with people that have gone down this path and give you some insight. Another one that we're talking about is fire bullets, not cannonballs. And what we mean by that is you don't have to design something in isolation, this monolith of an application or a service catalog or an orchestration engine. Start small. Put a single service on the catalog and test it, see how it works. Procure one particular hybrid style of IT, whether it's a productivity license or an ERP license. Try one out and just see what happens. Spray a few bullets, see which one lands, see which one works, and then start to gather your army behind that and then fire the cannonball. Don't sit back and wait for months or weeks and design something and then you find that the adoption wasn't there or it wasn't quite working or it was a bit clunky. Start with a few small things. Okay, partner with people who can help. There's obviously going back to the marketplace and the Cloud Connect providers. There's a number of people that are already in there that are pre-qualified and approved. You can have conversations with people like us and others that aren't going to want to purchase order straight away. They want to have a dialogue, open up discussions, pick people's brains. There's nothing wrong with actually talking to people, talking with providers and saying, listen, I'm thinking about this, I'm following the proper procurement process, but I just want to see what you guys are doing and what's out there. Have those conversations, we welcome them. On that point, I wanted to try and just wrap up because I'm pretty short on time, but I wanted to try and give you a bit of perspective on what we've seen happen over the last 24 months in the data center and how it's evolved from a data center to a digital community, and also just share some of the insights and the conversations that we're having with our customers about the digital communities and the marketplace. So I hope that was useful, guys. Yes.